Welcome to the Weather Insights Podcast. I'm meteorologist Scott Pitney along with meteorologist Jeff Linder, and we're recording this at about 9:30 p.m. on Sunday night, July 7th. I want to give the time because we are getting very close, just hours now from Beryl's landfall. Beryl's landfall expected to be sometime around 2 to 4 p.m. The storm about 100 miles offshore just south of Freeport and still expected to make landfall somewhere between Sargent and Freeport. And Jeff, the radar now is looking very impressive. I mean, you can still see some of that dry air drawing in from the southern part, which is why Beryl may not be a hurricane yet. But I wouldn't be surprised if the next report from the National Hurricane Center, if we're calling this Hurricane Beryl once again.
Yeah, and we're splitting hairs here between 70 and 75 miles an hour. Other thing to mention is we now have a really good feeder band coming in. This is going to start to be the onset of the tropical storm, 40-mile-an-hour winds. It's just off the coast here, and I'm going to show you a view here. This buoy here south of Freeport now gusting to 54. So this is about 60 miles due south of Freeport. We do have an oil platform over here. Of course, this is elevated. This is way up in the air, 150 feet in the air or whatever, gusting to 68. And this has been gusting over 60 now for a little bit of a time. And you can clearly see here the circulation in our buoys and our oil rig obs. But we do not have thus far any sustained tropical storm force winds on the coast. Interesting, we do have now a 44 mile an hour wind gust there at the San Bernard River. So that's probably that feeder band.
That's coming in.
Yep, coming in right there, producing that gusty wind. So these bands are going to come in. They're going to start producing 40, 50 mile an hour winds. And this is going to increase. And we're going to start getting into those sustained, more steady, higher winds as we go through tonight. And so we really need everybody to be where you are going to be by 10 o'clock tonight for the duration of the storm. Conditions are going to deteriorate quickly into the evening, late evening and the morning hours. And we're not going to see much improvement here until you get to about midday tomorrow.
Yeah, and also with these type of feeder bands too, these are the type of feeder bands that spawn tornadoes as well too. And anywhere from where it makes landfall, those heavier thunderstorms right around the eye wall to the northeast of there. So anywhere between where it'll make landfall, all the way even over to Beaumont, Port Arthur area, some of those outer bands can produce tornadoes. There's a lot of shear in the atmosphere. Jeff, I was out earlier and I'm just watching those lower clouds just screaming by.
Yeah. So looking at the wind here, it's not as important anymore where that center comes in. You can see the swath that's going to cut up right through southeast Texas. The red here is the stronger winds, the possible hurricane force wind gust, Brazoria, southern Wharton, Matagorda, maybe down into Matagorda Bay. And then this larger area here of 60 to 75 mile per hour winds covering most of the area. And so this is going to come in hard tonight. And this kind of corridor, kind of right through here, Matagorda County up through Fort Bend, Western Harris, Waller, and then into Montgomery County. This is kind of likely going to be the track or the corridor where we're going to see some of the strongest winds. But, sustained tropical storm force winds for a big portion of the area. This is vegetation damage. This is trees and tree limbs and power lines and power poles and that type of stuff, fences, stuff like that. We're not anticipating big structural damage here, roofs blowing off, windows blowing out. We're not anticipating that type of stuff. But we are anticipating, what you would get in a severe thunderstorm. And this is going to last for hours.
For hours.
For hours as we go through this. So, starting about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning along I-10 here in the next few hours on the coast, and then up around Highway 105, probably around sunrise tomorrow morning. And so, this is really the last bit of time we have. If you got anything loose outside, to get out there, pick it up, put in the garage, and prepare for this. And for lack of a better term, hunker down tonight and into tomorrow. Nobody should be out on the roads after, later tonight. Haven't really seen any changes here on the storm surge. We are seeing water level rise on the coast. So we do have some coastal flooding now in progress. As that center comes up, getting closer to the coast, we're really going to get that push. We are kind of going into a low tide now, and so we're going to start to head towards a high tide by sunrise. which is unfortunately coincides with the maximum push of wind and water we're going to get toward the coast. And so, these values are likely to be realized in Galveston Bay. This is a couple feet higher than Alberto, and same thing down here. But coastal flooding is going to be an issue until about midday tomorrow. Then the winds pull back a little bit. And this is not prolonged. This is not Alberta where it's 2 or 3 days of coastal flooding on the coast. This is really tonight through about midday, late afternoon tomorrow, and then that's it. The tides are going to go down, and we're going to have some recovery on this. And this is up at Morgan's Point. You can see here this push of water that comes in. The yellow line, the orange line, is the storm surge that comes in, and so this 00 is this evening. This 12 here is tomorrow morning, and so you can see right around tomorrow morning, getting that maximum push between tomorrow morning and about noon tomorrow of water. And we're talking potential here, most likely is around 4 feet, potentially 5 feet on the west side of Galveston Bay. And this is above normally dry ground. So we're talking, pretty high water levels with waves on top of that. So you will get the wave action, especially on them Gulf beaches. And there's going to be some issues down on the coast. Now, this isn't the type of storm surge that washes homes away and all that kind of stuff, but there will be a lot of flooding backside of Galveston Island, of course, Surfside, Treasure Island, Quintana Beach, the West End, over on the Bolivar, Highway 87. We will likely have some issues at the ferry. They're probably going to suspend the ferry service at some point just because they can't dock when the tides get this high. We've already closed the Lynchburg ferry. It's closed. One other thing I want to point out about the winds, when winds reach 45 miles per hour, that is kind of the threshold where we start sustained winds, when we start closing bridges. And so had a couple questions about the Fred Hartman, the Kemah Bridge. Both of those potentially closed if we hit sustained winds of 45, maybe a little questionable if we actually get that in Southeast Harris, but it could. And then other bridges are restricting access down on the coast, keeping non-residents out of some of those areas where they have some of the evacuation orders. We don't need people who are non-residents down in those coastal areas, getting in trouble and doing things they're not supposed to be doing. So there are checkpoints at some of those bridges down there to keep people that don't need to be there out of those areas.
Yeah, let those emergency personnel do their thing. Stay out of their way.
And then lastly, the rainfall. Again, I've kind of been, a little bit hesitant on this graphic. I think this is kind of the lower end of the rain. And I'm going to switch over, and I don't typically do this. I don't typically show a deterministic model, but this is the HER model, and I'm a little concerned. We've been taking a look at this, and this has been pretty consistent in showing some pretty significant banding here on the eastern flank of this, kind of right up the I-45 corridor tonight. And you can see some of these numbers are starting to get up there, 6, 7, 8, 10 inches of rain potentially here across Harris County, Brazoria County, Fort Bend County, up into Montgomery County, maybe. So we're going to have to keep a real eye on the flooding threat as we get into tonight. For the Harris County creeks and bayous, I've kind of been using the 8-inch threshold. If we can keep it under 8 inches, most of them will be able to handle that. We start going over that, and that's when we would probably start to get a little bit more concerned about flooding of the creeks and the bayous, and possibly some structure flooding. So I know we haven't focused a lot on the rain. We've been really hammering the wind and the storm surge issues, but I don't want to sleep on the rain, especially just seeing here what the HER is trying to do here this evening. And we all know these landfalling tropical systems and their feeder bands can just do a number on you in a short period of time. And this is the sort of case where you start to get 3-4 inches of rain in an hour, and we can quickly get into flooding. So if you have your car out on the street, you park on the street, you need to go out there right now and move it somewhere up, get it off the street, get it somewhere higher, parking garage somewhere, parking lot somewhere else, because the likelihood of us seeing urban flooding tonight and even potentially creek and bayou flooding is certainly there. So, be paying attention to this. It's going to be a long night and a long day tomorrow for a lot of us. Utilize all the resources that is out there to monitor the weather situation, the radars, your local TV media. All those are great things to monitor this. And lastly, the Harris County flood warning system, where you can look at the rain gauges and the creek and bayou levels. We're going to have to use it all tonight. And eventually we'll get through it. We'll get through it by midday tomorrow. But it's going to be rough in that time period.
Yeah. And try to get some sleep now, because when those tropical storm force winds and hurricane force winds start coming through, that's very difficult to sleep. It's very loud. So if you haven't ever been in that before. So thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Be sure to join us on the next Weather Insights podcast. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Weather Insights Podcast, and we will see you on the next podcast. Be safe, everyone.